Hi, this is Shane Nicholson with John Broughton on Retrospectives on KC Radio 97.7 FM.
Ghosts at the table, junk mail and trash.
Yeah.
I believe there are some songs on this record that came out of, or not your usual means of songwriting, but through something called Song Club. And tell us about that.
Yeah, I think there's about 4 or 5 that came from Song Club that are on the record. And Song Club is it's just a little bit of a group that was set up by Sam Hawksley, who's an Australian muso, but he's lived in Nashville for a couple of decades now, I think. And he's part of a song club over there. And he expanded it to Australia just for a bunch of close friends of his and artists. And there was only about 8 to 10 of us, I think, in the club. And basically it's a club where you just get given a prompt each week and you have to write a song, record a demo of it and upload it by the deadline every week. And if you don't do that, you're out. And Sam ran it pretty strictly. He was a bit of a hard ass, to be honest. So everyone had to make the deadline, which was midnight on a Thursday night every week. And by virtue of that, like most of my songs were written, between 10 and 11 p.m. on a Thursday night and then recorded and hastily sent off. So it's just because I'm a crammer from high school days.
Yeah.
And they were written really fast. But I think that's kind of the beauty of it, is that I was writing differently. I think we all were, because you have to make the deadline and you kind of write in a different mindset. It's just about getting it done. And I found that I wasn't second guessing as much as I was writing. I didn't have the time to second guess. So you were just writing really fast. I was playing pretty fast and loose with the prompts too. We all were, but it was just the prompts just to get you going. And it turned out to be a really good thing, because I couldn't go and travel at the time. It was before COVID, but it was a time when I was working, producing so much that I couldn't go away to write, which is what I would normally do. And I always try and find somewhere to isolate myself and be a bit self-absorbed for a while to write. But I didn't have that opportunity. So I don't think without Song Club, I wouldn't have, had enough motivation to even be writing at all at the time. So it forced me to write, and that snowballed into the record, So, yeah, it's about not quite half, but 4 or 5 songs that are on the record. And I was only in it for about 6 or 7 weeks. So almost every song I wrote in Song Club was on the record. And actually, Felicity Urquhart and Josh Cunningham's new record was written entirely from Song Club, every single song. So, and it's called Song Club, the record, which all came from that. And they, that's already released, and they've been out touring that. But yeah, every single song on that came from Song Club, because we were all in it together. And that was part of it as well. Like the bar gets raised by everyone else, because the only people that hear the songs are the people that are in it. Like you upload the songs to the group every week and you all listen, and you kind of have to, you feel outdone some weeks. Most weeks you felt outdone by Josh Cunningham, because he's just so damn talented, and his song sounded so fully formed, every week. And so the next week you'd have to raise the bar, and you'd have to think, geez, I'm going to have to pick up my game a bit, or I'm going to look like a weak link here. So it was good. It kind of, the friendly competitions kind of spurred everyone on. And yeah, it's cool. I think there's quite a lot of songs that are going to be coming out of Song Club, and it's still running, but most of the first group of us aren't really involved anymore. The pressure gets too much, like the expectation of having to do it every week. We're just like, eventually I was like, I can't do this anymore. I get nervous enough with any kind of deadlines. So yeah, I think we've all kind of had to take a step back, and Sam's recycled the group with some new people, but he keeps the numbers limited. And I don't know, we might go back to it. I might go back to it when I'm ready to collect songs for another record.
Yeah, I guess it kind of forces you to exercise that songwriting muscle, so it doesn't become a use it or lose it type skill.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it's hard to just get yourself in that mode, but once you're there, the muscle memory actually kicks in, and it does come back. But it's just getting over that initial hurdle sometimes, and that's what Song Club did, just pushed you enough to kind of roll over the hump, and then you're pretty much on your way, you know. The interesting thing was, though, that the songs were written so fast, or for me they were, and I didn't really edit them at all after that. So when I went to record them for the record, I kind of had just grown to be familiar with them and enjoy them the way they were in their very kind of raw, kind of quickly, the very raw way that they were written and not edited at the time. And yeah, they kind of they didn't really go through much change after that. I think I just kind of enjoyed the spontaneity of it and wanted to follow it through, you know.
So I guess because of the COVID situation, you're in a position of having to record without a band around you, which I'm guessing wouldn't be your chosen way of recording, but it turned out to be something of a blessing in disguise, and it gave the album maybe a more intimate feel than it might have otherwise.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, normally I would have. Yeah, I relish the opportunity to get in the studio with my band and make music together, because they do it so good and they make it so enjoyable, and it's just something that we love to do. And obviously we didn't really have that opportunity. But again, I started the record pre-COVID, but again, I just couldn't really. I didn't have the time to schedule in the making of my own record at the time, and so I actually just started recording it as demos, really, and it just ballooned from there. And then lockdowns hit, so I couldn't really plan a proper recording session. So I ended up getting my studio drummer, Josh Schubert, who's played on a bunch of my records and plays on just about everything I produce at the moment. And I got him to do all the drums and percussion and stuff, all that remotely from his house, his studio in the Blue Mountains. And he just emailed me drum tracks. I would then record to that. And then I think about a year later, I kind of I was only working like in little bits, fits and stages, because I was producing. So I'd just do an hour after a session one night, or an hour in the morning before, if a client was late or something. So it was very protracted, and it kind of accidentally, I do think of it as the accidental album. It just accidentally got finished over time, by chipping away at it slowly. And then at the end, because it had been such a long process, I think I'd lost objectivity and couldn't hear it anymore. So I sent it off to Matt Fell, who also plays in my band, and he's produced a couple of records for me in the past. And I just let him finish it. I just sent it all off to him and said, do what you like, mix it, send it back to me, done, you know. And so I still had some of my band that I would normally work with involved, but we didn't get to collaborate together in person. And we found that we can do it quite well as far as the music goes. We just miss the camaraderie of doing it together.
Yeah, the connection. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you, in a non-COVID world, would you consider recording in that manner again?
Absolutely. You mean in this manner?
Yeah.
Or in the old manner? Yeah,
no,
I think I would.
Yeah.
I think in this manner I would. I haven't done it this way since, you know, the very early days, when I was sort of a bit more, of a control freak, and I wanted to be kind of present in every stage of my records. And I would work a lot at home extensively, like I did on this one. But I enjoyed it in a way, because I haven't done it this way for a long time. I've normally booked in an intensive period where I just live and breathe the record, and we get it done in a couple of weeks, and that's all you're thinking about in that time. But this was kind of enjoyable, just spacing it out and just having it. I was making a record without really knowing I was making a record. I mean, obviously I knew I was working on it, but I at any one time, I didn't really know where the record was up to and how many songs I'd done or how finished they were. You would just randomly open a file every now and then and start playing some more stuff on it and then go to bed. And it just, yeah, I really enjoyed the way that it just kind of snuck up on me, you know. I probably would do it again. I mean, actually, I already have started doing it again. I've already started another record, and I'm already doing it that way now. So, yeah, I think I did enjoy the process.
Do you approach the production process differently, producing your own work as opposed to producing others?
I don't think so. I think I still just go on gut instinct all the time, and and I let my nose kind of just lead me. Sometimes I'll go down a crazy path for 3 hours and then find out that I've got to backtrack, and you know, that's how I like to work. I like to just follow my nose, follow the initial instinct I have, and I don't think I work any differently. I'm probably harder on myself than I am on artists I produce. I'm a bit more critical, but I think that's probably normal for any artist. But I think I'm getting better at knowing what I want before I do it, so I'm not going down those dead-end paths as much anymore. I can pretty much envisage the end product and get there without being waylaid too much along the way. I think that just comes with time, maybe, and getting better at knowing how to achieve what you hear in your head, you know.
Now, you released some singles in advance of the album, which seems to be the way to go these days. That's what people seem to be doing. That's the trend. Was there any criteria you used in choosing which songs to drop first to get out a specific feel of what the album was about?
Not really. I'm notoriously not just bad at it, but notoriously not really interested in my single choices. Like, as far as the record company goes, they know that they just I think they dread asking me, okay, what singles are we going to release? Because I can never decide. I don't know, you know, and I generally never agree with what anyone else agrees with. And I think I just don't fucking know what is a good single. Like, you know, I just can't see it with my own music, maybe. And there's a lack of objectivity there, probably. And that's why I have all these people that I work with, and I usually run with their ideas. So most of the singles that have come out have been through discussion with management and record label, and most of the time I've not understood why their choices are what they are, and I eventually just realised that they know what they're doing, and if I knew it, I wouldn't need them, would I? So, I'm really not that great at picking singles, and the only time I'll ever get involved is if I think it's really wrong, and I'll not understand it, and I'll need to be convinced, you know. But most of the choices for singles aren't mine. But it is funny that when you're recording a record, the songs that potentially will be singles usually are standing there with their hands up waving about. It's pretty obvious which ones could become singles when you're recording. But then there's a whole other range of factors that come into it, you know. So we released some singles on this to radio, like proper single releases, but then we did other ones that were just more soft release to streaming services and that kind of thing. And it depends what you're trying to achieve, I think, with each single and what you're trying to get out of releasing it as a single. But I think I'm happy as long as it's a good representation of what's to come on the record. I'm pretty happy with whatever goes out. I mean, I don't put songs on a record that I'm not happy with. So I think there's always ones that I think I did better than others, or ones that I'm more pleased with, but I don't let anything go out I wouldn't want people to hear. So I don't really mind what goes out as a single. I've never really seen myself as a single artist anyway, so it's really just a signpost to try and let people know that there's a new record coming.
A sample of what's to come, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Love the opening song, and You Will Have Your Way. I saw where you described it as a representation of how your view of the world has changed from your 20s to your 30s to your 40s. With that in mind, when you hear an old song of yours from way back in your 20s, do they seem sometimes to be written by another person from another time? Can you relate to them in the same way as you did back then?
Interestingly, yeah, I can relate to them. Well, it transports me back, and I can feel exactly those sounds. Just remind me straight away of how I felt, and I can physically feel the feelings I had writing that particular song. And I'm finding it at the moment a lot because I've just started making a new version of my first solo record. It's a movie which came out in 2002, must be, because it's 20-year anniversary this next year. So I'm recording an entirely new version of the record to re-release with the original as, like an updated version of how I would do it now. And going through all these old songs that I wrote as a 25-year-old or whatever, and re-recording them and singing those lyrics, it's like it does take me back, but it's interesting to see how differently I would write that song now if I was writing about that same thing, and I notice that when I'm doing it, and I guess that's normal. We all change and have different takes on situations, and I'm surprised, well, not surprised maybe, but so much of the songs back then was so kind of self-centric. They were all about me and how I fit into the world, and there was not really much outside of that, you know, which I guess maybe that's normal too. But yeah, I've noticed that. But I've been enjoying it. I've been loving it because, you know, it's nice to go back over these songs and reinterpret them and rediscover what was cool about them and do them in a way that, you know, I've got 20 years of record making under my belt since then. So you attack that song in a completely different way, and that's what I've done. I took them back to just a demo version and started from scratch, and I've been really enjoying it. It started just as a project for me. I wasn't sure if I'd release it. I mean, I'm still not. If it's finished and I love it, I will, but it's been really enjoyable to work on it.
Another standout song is How to Write a Song, a bit of a half serious, half joking dig at the aspects of the music business and how artists put themselves out there. And you nailed it without coming across as a grumpy old man or a grumpy old songwriter.
Oh, good.
Are you
I was worried
not
about that.
Creating that impression?
Mm-hmm. I was very worried about that. Even at the 11th hour before we mastered the record, I had to call my manager and double check and to say, are you sure that song is going to fly? Are people going to get it, or am I going to be this grumpy asshole? You know that. And you know, he always convinces me. But yeah, it's funny. It's a bit tongue in cheek. Although at the same time, just about everything in that song is true and has happened. You know, mostly to me over the years, and it's sort of true. But yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a cheeky take on the idea that I do struggle a little bit with what it takes to sell music now. You know, it's turned artists into real self-promoters, which is kind of fine, but it's really taken a coolness aspect out of it for me. You know, like I used to look up to my favorite artists as cool. They were the coolest people in the world. They were the coolest people on the planet. And now those people are they just forced into being shameless self-promoters, you know, and it's just changed a bit of the concept for me on what it's like to be, what it takes, I guess, to sell music now. And I struggle a bit with that. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just a bit of a sort of a frivolous song, I guess, in a lot of ways, but there's an underlying sentiment there that does bother me, you know. A song many music lovers can relate to is Harvest on Vinyl, where you will talk about your relationship with that classic Neil Young album. But when you think about it, there's a kind of sadness to that too, because in this download generation, it's impossible to imagine people looking back with the same kind of affection to a download in 20, 30 years' time as they do to their old vinyl. I agree. Yeah, it's definitely changing. I mean, hopefully it's replaced by something else where people will find a connection to their favourite artists in a different way. I'm not sure how that would happen, but I agree. Like the actual act now still of sitting down and putting on a record such as Harvest takes me back to the feeling of doing it as a kid. Like I can actually, when I do that, the process of taking the vinyl out and putting it on the player, I can actually smell the room that I was in as a kid, and I can be transported back completely in time. And I don't think I'm ever going to get that through an iPhone screen, that's for sure.
Tell us about the song Life Ain't Fine. I was curious to see you post on Facebook a reassurance to people that were worried that the song was autobiographical and actually concerned for your welfare.
They were. It's so weird. Like, I've been doing this for so long, and everyone I know has heard every song I've ever written, and for some reason, all these people reached out when that one was released and said, "Is everything cool? Are you and Emma still together? Like, what's going on?" You know, it's like, that's just a fucking song. I don't know. Like, it's just a song. And so for some reason, maybe it's just we're in this time at the moment where everyone's checking in on everyone, and maybe it was a nice thing. It actually sparked a whole bunch of conversations I hadn't had with people for a while. So
that's a good.
It wasn't a bad thing. Yeah, it was good.
References to Paul Kelly in that song, and I believe he was the first person you played the song to. Did his response to the song match the kind of response you were hoping to get from him?
Oh yeah, he's straight away. He said, "Oh, I love an answering song," and for anyone who knows, especially country music, like Paul's a huge country music fan. Answering songs have a very long tradition in country music, especially where someone would release a song, you know, and then a year later, someone else would release another song in response to that, you know, usually a directly personal song, you know, and there's a whole history of those songs. And so as soon as I played it to him, and I wanted to play it to him first so I could get his blessing, because I completely took ownership of a whole list of his song titles in that song to tell that story, and bastardized everything, you know. And but he said, "No, I love an answering song. Go forth," you know. So he gave me his blessing, yeah. But I just decided to tell the whole song through the use of his lyrics or song titles, and you know, cheekily kind of steal his work. I mean, it's just a little unrequited love song, really. But what makes it interesting to me is dressing it up telling it in that way was what gave it an interesting angle for me, I guess.
Now, the song "High Price of Surviving," already an award-winning song for you, and a song where I've seen you mention that you send out to the wonderful musician Glenn Hanna, who passed away in 2019. Even though you wrote it before his passing, what initially did inspire that song? It obviously wasn't initially inspired by him.
No, and it was actually written as part of a songwriting workshop that I was doing. Every year I work at a songwriting camp tutoring new songwriters, you know, in Nundle in New South Wales. And I was writing that song with a young guy, Leon Milner from Queensland, who was only 18 or 19 or something at the time. And we wrote that one morning after breakfast, and took about 3 hours. And didn't think much more of it. It was written very fast, and he's a really talented kid. And I shouldn't call him a kid; he's a man now. And I remember writing it really fast, and then not really thinking much about it for a few months until it resurfaced. And then I thought, "Oh, that's actually pretty good." So I actually recorded that song and released, and the plan was to release it not as part of this record. I recorded that back in 2019, early 2019. It was written in 2018. So it was going to come out about June, I think, 2019, and then we lost Glenn, and I had to face the idea that, or the prospect that people would think it was written in response to that happening. So I pulled it and gave it 6 months or so before we released it again, or before we released it for the first time, just to kind of create some space between those two things happening. And then because it took on a life of its own, it has since become his song, definitely, as far as certainly for the band on stage. Whenever we play it, it's our collective remembering Glenn moment every night. And that's kind of become a special part of our shows every night for us. So I felt like it needed to be on the record, even though it was kind of made separately. I kind of felt like it belonged there. So it was actually included just at the last minute, really.
Cool. Now, I know I've got to let you go, but before I do, and it's probably pointless asking you this because things change every day, but what's the status?
You don't have to rush. Like, I don't have anything till 11, so if you've got more questions, it's fine.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. What is the status of your touring plans at the moment?
They're fluid. Well, the whole tour was booked in, obviously, as it was last year, but it's slowly being peeled back from the front end. So obviously the release happening in a few weeks, the release shows the launch shows are off. and they're just peeling them back from the front. And unfortunately, a bunch of festivals are falling over, and I lost a few of those yesterday. And so we're just trying to wait, I guess, and see. We're rescheduling shows, leapfrogging them back all the time, and then hoping for the best. You know, it is a tricky situation to be in. In some ways, it'd be easier to just kind of say, okay, we're just going to not tour for another year, and we'll wait and see what happens. Maybe things will be back to normal. We won't have to book things, reschedule, rebook, you know. But then the other side of that is that I don't know if that's going to help me as an artist or any artist moving forward, you know, with their next. You need to plan. You need to have a plan in the works to kind of feel like you're getting somewhere as an artist. It's really easy to become, when you're sitting still with no plans, it's really easy, I think, for a creative person to become quite badly affected by that, or feeling stagnant or non-productive. And I do think that's why we're experiencing such a huge surge in kind of mental health issues in the music industry, certainly through all of this time. So I like the idea of planning. It does make more work when you've got to keep rescheduling, but it gives you something to look forward to and work towards, even if you're going to have to cancel it in 3 months, you know, and move it. Plus, it's just what we do. Like, you can't not do it. So you have to try and find a way and hope for the best. So the touring plans are fluid, but there's, you know, I was really looking forward to it. We had so many great shows lined up that I was looking forward to do, you know, cherry-picked all of my favourite venues from the last, you know, however many years of touring. We had just had such a great run planned, and I was really looking forward to it working out so smoothly. But it's okay. It's not to be. We'll just make the most of it, I think, and get vaccinated and hopefully get across borders. You know,
yeah.
That's the idea.
That's the plan. As you mentioned earlier, production work has been thick and fast over during this COVID time. Have you intentionally taken on more production work that you normally would because of the COVID situation, or was it just fell your way?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Took on more and too much, to be honest. Like, one of the downfalls, I guess, of people who work in any industry that's as unstable as music is that you never know when the next job's coming. You know, you don't have a salary. You never know when the next payday is going to be there. So it's really hard. I think it's ingrained in us from very early on that you can't say no to jobs, because you have to take whatever is there, because you could go through a whole season of nothing after it. So I just took on everything crazy, you know, and I'm still cleaning up the mess now 2 years later from early 2019, 18 months later. I've still got projects I'm trying to get out the door because I just took on too much, and I know that now. But there's also a desire to want to do that. Like, if someone comes to you and wants your input, you sort of don't want to let them down by saying, "Oh, look, I'm too busy." I'd rather take it on and struggle with it a bit, or even if it takes longer than normal, kind of want to make it happen for them, you know. So I definitely took on more work than I would. I normally like to keep down to 2 or 3 projects at a time, but I had, at one stage there, had 6 albums, 3 EPs, a couple of singles, plus my album going on. It was just chaos, you know, total chaos. But I'm trying to kind of sort that out. I'm trying to thin the herd a little bit now, and just learn to not, that knee-jerk reaction, you know, that's so heavily ingrained in us. Grab work, take work, don't say no to work, you know, and I think I have to learn how to say no a bit better. Yeah.
And just one thing, any significance to choosing Living in Colour as the title?
No, only other than the song that comes from the song Where in the World on the record, which was a Song Club song, written very, very fast. That's why it's very short too, just for the Song Club thing. And I submitted it to Song Club, went to record it, and there was a couple of lines in the second verse or something that I thought were a bit throwaway. I changed a couple of lines as I was singing the vocal, and it threw up that line, which was a specific line about Gunga, like Glenn Hanna from my band, who we'd lost, and that line somehow seemed to sum up what the record was saying. The entire line, I mean, in the song, which is that we'll be living in colour again, but still waiting for the dark to come. And it kind of summed up what I was trying to, the duality of those of life, I guess, in the record. And also because that line was in direct reference to him, the record was going to be dedicated to him, and it was just a nice way to kind of, I don't know, acknowledge that, I think. And it was a very cathartic project for me in that sense, you know, because there's a lot of him wrapped up in it. It's also the first record of mine he's never played on in 20 years, you know, because he wasn't here to play on it. So it felt really strange. And I mean, there has been other records in the past he hasn't played on, but he's been involved in some way doing artwork or photos, you know, with everything I've done. So it was important for me to kind of somehow include him in the record.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Shane.
John, I really appreciate it. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. And we look forward to the album being out there in the big wide world, and hopefully see you down here in Melbourne before too long.
I look forward to it. Take care down there.
All the best.
All right. Thanks, mate. Bye-bye.
Cheers, mate. Bye.